meeting number 9 of the Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, September 18th, 2025, the committee commences its study on the changing landscape of truck drivers in Canada. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to standing orders. I'd like to make a few comments to the benefit of our witnesses and our members before beginning. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, please click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. For those on Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you can select the appropriate channel for interpretation, either floor, English, or French. And for those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members joining us in the room, I have 2 placards. If I lift up the yellow placard, it means please wrap up your remarks. And if I hold up the red placard, it means that I will have no choice but to cut you off to ensure that we have equal time given to all members of all parties. I'd like to now welcome our witnesses. Appearing with us today, colleagues from the Canadian Trucking Alliance, we have Stephen Laskowski, President and Chief Executive Officer. Welcome. Jeffrey Wood, Senior Vice President Policy, and Jonathan Blackham, Director, Policy and Public Affairs. Welcome. We have from Trucking Human Resources Canada, Angela Sprinter, Chief Executive Officer. Welcome to you. And we have from Women's Trucking Federation of Canada, Joanne Couture, Executive Director, and Shelley Walker, Chief Executive Officer. Welcome to you. I'd like to thank you all on behalf of all members for appearing today. We'll get right to it, and I will turn the floor over to you, Mr. Laskowski. You have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks to all the committee members for committing to studying the crisis that is destroying our industry, causing carnage on our highways, and robbing our social network of billions of dollars each year. The CTA is comprised of 7 provincial trucking associations, and our membership has over 5,000 carrier and supplier members from across the country. In turn, these companies employ over 250,000 Canadians. I want to lead my brief opening comments with what I believe you will quickly realize about this issue, that the driver Inc. crisis in our industry is not a problem without clear and identifiable solutions. It's simply a crisis without the necessary political will to solve the problem. The issue the committee is examining is not a new one to our sector, nor should it be to the federal government. CTA has been sounding the alarm with the federal cabinet and provinces about this issue since 2018. The problems identified in 2018 have since been left to grow unchecked, and in 2025 has evolved into a full-blown crisis, a crisis of compliance, road safety, drug trafficking, human rights abuses, rampant labor law, and tax fraud. It's been allowed to become out of control. In the 2022 Fall Economic Statement, the federal government, the issue of Driver Inc. was addressed by name, with over half a page dedicated to the issue. The statement spoke about the tax and labor abuse taking place, and it stated that further details, particularly as they relate to taxation, would be revealed in the 2023 budget. At the time, the industry took this to represent the government's acknowledgement of the issue and their commitment to fix it. However, when the 2023 budget arrived, it was completely silent on the issue and has left the industry questioning why ever since. Nonetheless, we are hopeful that this study sheds a light on this issue and why it is being allowed to persist for nearly a decade. Driver Inc., what is it? As the name suggests, it simply means incorporated drivers, but of course it is much more than just that. Driver Inc. was born in 2011 and is the offspring of the PSB tax classification, the introduction of a temporary moratorium on T4As, and the knowledge that unscrupulous trucking owners have had for a long time, that there is significant lack of enforcement and coordination between the federal departments of labor, CRA, and the provincial labor and tax equivalents. This issue does not stem from a lack of education or knowledge about the industry or governments. It's a well-thought-out scam that has expanded over the years to now incorporate immigration fraud, driver training fraud, human trafficking, the movement of contraband, and illegal cross-border shipments. This growing scam furthers the deterioration of highway safety across the country and the bankruptcies of many legitimate law-abiding trucking companies that are critical to the fabric of your communities. The unfortunate truth about this scam is that bad actors are not only winning, they are also taking over the industry and the Canadian supply chain. How does it work? Different departments have different independence tests, but some of the key components of all of them include ownership of tools, control integration, and the opportunity for profit and loss. In trucking, a Driver Inc. driver fails all of these and are virtually indistinguishable from a traditional employee. They work under the direction of the company, and the driver the company trucks. The only difference is they are coached, coerced, or elect to incorporate themselves in an attempt to masquerade as something other than an employee. For the company, they use this justification to strip workers of all their labor right entitlements under the Federal Labor Code. Together, this allows the company owner to pocket at least $20,000 to $30,000 per year per driver. On the flip side, exploiting CRA blind spots created by the T4A moratorium and a historical lack of interest in PSBs provides the opportunity to commit tax evasion. This is not hyperbole. It is verifiable fact. But ESDC and CRA have studied the issue, and both have found rampant noncompliance centered in the trucking industry, exactly as the Labor has been saying for years. We have submitted a brief to the committee that explains the problem in details, provides glimpses of the mountain of evidence that has surfaced over the years, and provides details on what is needing. These solutions include, this will be my last comments, Mr. Chair, ending the T4A moratorium immediately, implementing a Part 3 to the CRA's work on PSBs, a call to coordinate with all federal and provincial governments and agencies on national misclassification blitz in the trucking industry with real penalties, deploy CRA, RCMP, ESDC, IRCC to truck inspection stations across the country, implement new security measures for Canadian and U.S. trucks crossing the international border to end criminal ownership, which has infiltrated Canadian fleets, expedite the completion and investment into the national database by Transport Canada that will create necessary oversight and knowledge of who owns and operates these fleets and their safety records in all provinces and territories. There are also a host of other solutions that are in that larger document that you all have. Thank you again for the opportunity to address this committee, and I look forward to discussing these issues with you here today. Again, thank you very much. This is a critical issue for our industry, and thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leskowski. Next, we'll go to Ms. Splinter. Ms. Splinter, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you to Mr. Chair for the invitation to speak here today. We welcome this timely study on the examination of issues impacting Canada's trucking and logistics sector. Trucking HR Canada is a national workforce development council that works collaboratively with stakeholders in commercial transportation, public policy, training, and economic analysis, ensuring Canada's freight transportation network has the skilled workforce it needs. We offer a range of HR-related programs and resources, and we are the industry's national authority on labour market information. As a national not-for-profit, we are funded through federal and provincial grants and contributions and our own sustainable programming. We engage over 10,000 stakeholders through our communication and outreach initiatives. As the dominant mode of transportation in Canada's supply chain, the trucking and logistics sector is the most significant enabler of Canadian growth and prosperity. Our labour market data shows that 340,000 truck drivers are currently operating in Canada, reaching into every community nationwide. When we consider the priorities of Canadians today, expanding international trade, strengthening internal trade, driving economic growth, meeting housing and grocery needs, curbing inflation, the trucking and logistics sector is key, as these priorities all rely on effective goods movement. And while our nation's supply chain stability and economic viability rely on a strong trucking sector, we continue to experience job vacancies higher than other industries. Driver Inc. is a clear violation of both tax and labour compliance practiced by unethical trucking companies. Why is this a significant industry issue? It represents a black market and illegal rogue practice within the Canadian trucking sector, characterized by the deliberate misclassification of truck drivers as independent contractors rather than employees. I will speak to 3 specific areas of concern. Impact on employee protections. This misclassification is strategically deployed to circumvent mandatory tax obligations and labor regulations, enabling companies to avoid remitting income and payroll taxes, EI, CPP contributions, and other statutory employee benefits. It also circumvents obligations related to overtime pay and fundamental employee benefits. As a result, many truck drivers under this model lose vital protections, including job stability, retirement benefits, sick leave, and holiday pay. These employment standards are core to Canada's labour culture and essential to fairness and equity in the workplace. Their erosion puts employees at risk and weakens the foundation of our social safety net. 2, impact on our industry's ability to recruit and retain workers. The Driver Inc. model is directly impacting the long-term sustainability and stability of our workforce. This negative reputation fostered by these unethical practices is prompting new entrants and existing workers to seek opportunities elsewhere. There is a growing concern that the lack of labor protections will have a profound impact on the availability of skilled workers in the future. The model is a well-known practice within the industry, leading to more candidates inquiring about the model. This makes it harder for compliant fleets to recruit in an already small pool. 3, impact on Canadian priorities. With the current economic climate and trade issues, it is more important than ever that our country has a safe, secure, and compliant transportation infrastructure. This model directly impacts government tax revenue streams and also contributes to an uneven competitive landscape within the trucking industry, disadvantaging compliant carriers who adhere to labor and tax laws. The Driver Inc. model is creating a rigged market where compliant carriers struggle to compete against those exploiting the model for cost savings and profit. A serious concern here is that without adequately addressing the issue, compliant carriers may be tempted to take an "if we can't beat them, join them" stance. Canada's truck drivers keep our economy and our daily lives moving. They deserve fair treatment, safe working conditions, and employers who play by the rules. The Driver Inc. model undermines all of this. It is not just a labor issue, it's a matter of ethics, equity, and national integrity. We owe it to every legitimate carrier, every worker, and every taxpayer to end this practice once and for all and build a stronger, fairer industry together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Splinter. Next, we'll go to Ms. Couture. The floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Bon après-midi, cher président et membres du comité.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee.
Director of the Women's Trucking Federation of Canada. I've been a professional driver for 31 years, 27 of those as an owner-operator. I haul dangerous goods in a liquid chemical tanker for cross-border trade, contracted to one of Canada's largest carriers. I've traveled through all 10 provinces and the lower 48 states in every imaginable condition. That experience makes me a subject matter expert in road safety, and I am here to speak about how Driver Inc. is eroding it. I'm not just an advocate today. I am the voice of thousands of professionals, owner-operators, small carriers, instructors, and drivers who are being pushed out of the industry and by unchecked spread of Driver Inc. Financial pressure is being placed on those who follow the rules, while profit-driven actors cut corners on safety, maintenance, and training. They don't care about the drivers they put in the trucks or the public sharing the road. That's your family and mine. Driver Inc. is not innovation. It's exploitation disguised as flexibility. It misclassifies employee drivers as independent contractors, stripping them of basic protection while allowing carriers to dodge source deductions that fund social programs. These drivers lose out on benefits and face added liabilities in the event of a workplace accident. This model rewards evasion and punishes compliance. For small and mid-sized carriers, Driver Inc. is a death sentence. They're forced to compete with operators who underbid contracts by cutting corners. Owner-operators are pressured to accept rates that don't even cover costs. That's not competition, that's coercion. Insurance premiums are rising not because of individual risk, but because of overall increase in claims. Some insurers have even pulled out of the commercial market entirely. And safety. When drivers are misclassified, there's no employer oversight. No one is checking hours of service, vehicle maintenance, or training. We're seeing more fatigue-related accidents, poorly maintained equipment, and unnecessary risks on our roads. This isn't just a labor issue, it's a public safety issue. What message are we sending to the next generation? Young people see instability, exploitation, and lack of respect for the profession. A step forward is coordinated action from all levels of government. Consistent enforcement across all jurisdictions is a must, and we need a national trucking credential that protects workers, supports compliant carriers, and restores integrity to our sector. A credential that educates everyone on their rights and responsibilities. Fixing the financial deficiencies of Driver Inc. will have a mirror effect on fixing highway safety for all users. Merci de votre temps. Je suis ouverte à vos questions.
Thank you for
Merci.
your time. I'm open to your questions. Thank you, Madame Couture. I think Ms. Walker had some things to share as well, so over to you.
Afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Shelley Walker. I'm the CEO of the Women's Trucking Federation of Canada. I have been a professional driver for over 30 years and now lead national efforts to promote safety, equality, and integrity in trucking. Through WTFC, I support women, youth, newcomers, and underrepresented groups in building sustainable careers, and I lead the No Human Trafficking campaign to educate our industry and the public about exploitation and forced labor. Trucking is uniquely positioned to be both a target of exploitation and a frontline defense against it. That's why I'm here today to call for an end to predatory misclassification schemes like Driver Inc., which destabilize our industry and create fertile ground for trafficking. Let me be clear, we fully support the lawful owner-operator model, but Driver Inc. entirely different. It misclassifies employee drivers, strips them of protections, shifts liabilities onto individuals, and rewards carriers who cut corners at the expense of safety and fairness. Only 4.3% of truck drivers in Canada are women. Under Driver Inc., maternity leave, predictable schedules, workplace accommodations disappear, making it nearly impossible for women and other underrepresented groups to build lasting careers. If we're serious about equity, we must ensure every driver has the security that only employee status provides. We're also seeing a rise in labor trafficking. Vulnerable drivers, often newcomers, are lured into fee-heavy arrangements, then tracked by withholding their passports, phantom surcharges, and threats. This is debt bondage in emotion, a stain on our industry, and a threat to Canadian values. Predatory carriers gain up to 30% cost advantage by outsourcing wages, benefits, and safety obligations. Honest operators can't compete. Investment in training and maintenance dries up. Road safety suffers with more fatigue-related collisions, mechanical failures, and a risk for every Canadian family. WTFC has submitted a proposal for a national trucking credential, a practical, enforceable solution to restore integrity, protect vulnerable workers, and raise professional standards across Canada. The time for consultation has passed. What we need now is decisive action. By funding and implementing this credential, Canada can send a clear message. Exploitation has no place in our supply chain, and trucking will remain a profession built on fairness, accountability, and pride. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Walker. Merci, Madame Couture, and thank you both for your steadfast dedication
Thank you, Ms. Walker.
for decades moving our economy forward. We'll begin our line of question today with Mr. Albus. Mr. Albus, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all our witnesses for being here today. Look, Canadians are feeling unsafe on their roads. They're feeling unsafe in their communities. I hear the language from all of our witnesses here today, things like criminality, exploitation and forced labor, chaos. These are not things that I would usually associate with the trucking industry, which used to be a job that could put food on the food on the table for a family. And the companies that I know in my area, like Barry and Smith Trucking, have great reputation as family generational businesses. So maybe I'll start with the CTA. Mr. Laskowski, Can you identify, you said that there is a neglect after 10 years of successful Liberal governments. Can we start where the neglect has been most acute in your industry?
So, it's from a federal perspective, it's twofold. The major responsibility at the federal level is both at the CRA with the PSB and the T4A, and then again at the labor side with the misclassification. I'll start on the tax side. With the T4As, the moratorium went in 2011. It was supposed to be temporary. We're now moving on 14. The definition of temporary, I don't believe, makes 14 years. It is an open gateway for misclassification and tax evasion. There are no records of these folks, and so they are able to hide. That is why there are many drivers participating in this. Some are forced and some are coerced, as you've heard, and then others just see it as the ability, I just won the lottery, the government doesn't care.
I should say earlier this spring, Mark Carney called an election, and that killed some important parliamentary authorizations that would allow CRA to be able to do this work, to be getting on a misclassification. What's the CTA's opinion of this setback?
Well, we need that legislation back. It is critical that the CRA and the ESDC work together. They've committed to doing that to us, and that's an important step in ending driver Inc. A step, not the whole solution, but a step.
I've heard that 85% of the complaints regarding the Canadian Labour Code stem from the trucking industry. Is that about right?
That's, the answer is yes, the short answer, but I'm quite verbose, as you're about to all find out over the next hour. And I think you and others have said it, you're shocked that this isn't your father's trucking company anymore. We are all here as long-serving trucking members. It takes us with no great pride to come here, committee members, to talk about our industry the way you just heard it. We need this industry cleaned up. And the reality, committee members, is that the answer is yes.
So in your opinion, there are some very bad actors out there that are ruining your industry, that are making our highways unsafe and your industry chaotic. Would you also say that the government has been adding fuel to the fire by its continued inaction? What are some of the tangible steps that they should immediately take to secure our roads?
Bring back the T4As, enforce PSBs, and start going out with serious teeth enforcing misclassification at the federal level.
Okay. I'd like to just quickly go to Ms. Walker of the Women's Trucking Federation of Canada. You had mentioned earlier exploitation and forced labor. Those are shocking words to me, ma'am. What do you think is, like, who are these people that are being abused, and how in this day and age are we allowing this kind of conduct?
I think what might be shocking for the committee members to hear is that these are people that are coming to Canada through legitimate pathways. They're coming through as TFWs, LMIAs. They're recruited over in their own country.
Are you saying that our immigration system is fueling this?
Yes.
So structurally, explain that, please. How is the lack of action at the Canadian government level allowing this kind of gross behavior?
A lot of times for most of these immigrants, when they come over here and they're on a work placement, they have to work at one place. They don't know what that employer is like other than what they're told when they're recruited. I have drivers now that I have helped that have been only living inside of a truck, which is a little box. They're being paid 38 cents a mile. The rest of the fleet's being paid 70 cents a mile. They don't have their passports. They're running Canada only.
Well, ma'am, I only have limited time, but I just want to say thank you for being brave and coming forward, all of you for being brave to come and say something that I know you've all had a great career in this industry, so it must sadden you. But Canada's Conservatives, we believe that this can be fixed, but only if the government starts taking action now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albus. Next, we'll go to Mr. Kellaway. Mr. Kellaway, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the witnesses for being here in your testimony. In particular, Ms. Couture and Ms. Walker being truck drivers. It was only for many Canadians during COVID that we realized how much we rely on you and how essential you are. And I want to say thank you for everything that you do, of course, and the advocates as well. This would be just basically a nod type of question for many of you, because I have a few questions. When you have a committee like this, you devise your questions beforehand, and then you hear testimony, and then you scrap those questions, and you go for the testimony questions. So I think it was referenced in 2022 in the fall economic statement that the government committed about $26 million over 5 years to ESDC. To take stronger action on misclassification and conduct more audits. Understanding that this is a complex issue, but that was, in your opinion, a decent move to move forward? Would that be like a nod would suffice for anybody?
Yes.
Yeah, so would you all agree that that's something that's constructive?
I would say it's constructive and it is helpful, but doesn't go near the level of this problem.
Fair point. In 2024, CRA and ESDC signed an information sharing arrangement in March of 2025 to enhance enforcement in the federally regulated trucking sector. Again, constructive, under the category of constructive?
But long overdue.
Right. So those were two items that the Conservatives voted against. I find that interesting. So I want to go into questions with respect to roles and responsibilities. So this one would be for Ms. Splinter. How much of a role does the federal government play in regulating the industry? You spoke to some degree to this, but I wonder if you can unpack that, knowing that we just have a limited amount of time and I have some more questions for you.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify how much role they have in regulating Driver Inc. or other aspects. So with Driver Inc., I think this is, into what CTA has been lobbying the government on is with the CRA. They see the issue being around tax evasion. I spoke to other issues that are happening broadly from an HR perspective and how it's impacting our workforce. So I think getting into specifics on the regulation piece gets me outside of my mandate, what I do at Trucking HR Canada, and I think that would better be directed perhaps to the Canadian Trucking Alliance.
So specifically with regards to CRA and the taxation issue. So, this is complicated, but we can simplify it. And the CRA has committed to bringing back T4As, but it needs to happen now. 14 years is long enough. So you bring that back up, step one. Step two, the personal service business model was studied by CRA. And Jonathan to my left here has been involved in that and can provide a little bit more detail with that. But simply put, CRA has discovered we have a big problem with PSBs. Trucking is our number one problem. So the question for CTA is, why hasn't action occurred? Why did the fall economic statement say that CRA was going to give us answers in the 2023 budget and silence ever since? And the crisis grows. Billions of dollars. In the larger document towards the end, we have costed it. CRA has been provided these documents. You are looking at between $1 and $5 billion, how you want to cut it. And as governments, as we know right now, Prime Minister Carney is leading our nation in trade and also said we have to limit expenses. We are here as an industry to give you $5 billion and clean our industry up. Why hasn't CRA taken us up on our offer?
I appreciate the answer to that question. So this would be a question for you, but also for perhaps some of the other folks that are here. So one of the items brought up in the testimony was a national trucking credentialing system. So I want to unpack that a bit. So I want to get a sense of, is that the federal government playing a larger role in regulating the industry? And should the government take back some of the oversight of the industry as it was, I think, during the 80s. Are they the same, or are they two different things that I'm talking about? Are you looking at the federal government to take over more of the oversight, or is this something different in terms of the national credentialing system?
The national credential is different. So, like, when you're going back, you're talking about the 80s, that's before deregulation, which is a totally different scenario than what we face today in Driver Inc. What we have is a lack of, every province is doing their own thing when it comes to transportation, and it needs federal mandate oversight. The federal mandate for 103.5 hours is not enough. We need drivers to be encompassed more. So part of what this is not only addressing the issues with truck training across the province, it addresses Driver Inc., it addresses forced labor, it addresses human trafficking, and it's every person in the industry that is involved, as well as government and a provincial and federal counterpart. So it needs to be a team approach, because that's the only way we're going to change it, because we have 13 provinces that don't talk to each other.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kellaway, and thank you, Ms. Walker. Prochainement, nous avons Monsieur Barcelou-Duval. À vous la parole.
Mr. Barcelou-Duval, you have the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you very much, and thanks to our witnesses for being with us today. I think that your testimonies are very instructive, and these things are worth bringing to the light, and that's why it's important to move forward with this study. I'm taking advantage of this opportunity to share with you that we held a press conference yesterday with members of the trucking industry. There were 10 to 15 different businesses present, in addition to national associations. Essentially, they were there to mobilize strongly because for them, this is a question of life and death, literally life and death for these legitimate businesses. And it's also a life and death matter for the people who are driving our roads. I find it absolutely awful that the government has not yet taken up the situation. For the time being, the government seems to be mute and seems to be voluntarily blinded to the reality of the situation. Mr. Laskowski, how many meetings have you had with the government?
Lost count on the number of meetings I've had with the government, with Jonathan and Jeffrey. We've been lobbying this issue since 2018 officially. The government has been very responsive in granting us meetings. We've had multiple meetings. The issue is, are we going to get some action? And I believe you would have heard that from the carriers you're dealing with. This is a complicated issue. We're a mature organization, and complicated issues take time. But not 7 years. Not 7 years.
Donc, je comprends que si vous avez perdu.
I understand that whether if you've lost count of the number of meetings you've had, it's because the government is well aware of this problem and has been informed as to possible solutions to implement to resolve the problem. As you yourself mentioned, in 2023, or rather 2022, in the fall economic statement, the government said it had understood the problem and was going to act because it said that it wanted to do something. But it didn't happen in the 2023 budget, despite the undertaking in the fall economic statement in 2022. Do you know what happened with the amounts that were announced in that fall economic statement of 2022? And do you know whether what happened in 2023? Have you been told any reason why it didn't happen? 2 questions.
What happened and what didn't happen? The money was given to the Ministry of Labor, ESDC at the time, to enter an enforcement, and that is in action, and it is a good step forward. It is somewhat, to be quite honest with you, we're thankful for it, but it's like giving us an umbrella in a hurricane. We need a lot more enforcement than that. But what didn't happen was the commitment in that economic statement that we would get a resolution from CRA. And folks, this isn't complicated. I'm trying not to be dismissive or look argumentative, but it's really simple. It's bring back the T4As, which you've had on moratorium for 14 years, and start enforcing the personal service businesses, which you've studied. And maybe Jonathan, if the committee will allow, can explain the study that took place there. And they committed to enforcing PSBs, and then they uncommitted. So maybe, Jonathan, you can explain a little bit, if Mr. Chair, if you would allow just my representative to explain what happened here.
It would be up to Mr. Barcelou Duval. It is his time.
Oh, I'm
to
sorry.
give.
Il me reste combien de temps?
Vous reste 2 minutes et demie.
Ouais,
monsieur.
How much time do you have left? You have 2.5 minutes. Yes, in that case, go ahead.
Thanks. So, when there's the T4A issue, there's also the PSB issue, and they're related. And when CRA studied the PSB issue, they found gross noncompliance. When the personal business classification was first introduced, trucking was nearly non-existent. It was something that professionals used, IT, that sort of thing. Now we fast forward, this is sort of the 80s, 90s. Now we fast forward today, we find trucking is by far the #1 user of the model. When when CRA studied it, they found on average just under $17,000 per person in tax evasion identified. They identified trucking as the #1 user. And within that, they also found the reasoning. So when speaking with people in the sector, why are you engaging in this? Why are you doing this? It was all the answers the industry had always said. They talked about how their employer told them to do it. They talked about how they were told it was a condition of employment. They were told that it was a gray area for taxation. They were told it was, some safe haven in the tax world. And of course, none of this was true. So CRA knows all of this.
Merci pour votre réponse. J'en retiens surtout le
Thank
chiffre
you
que
for
vous
your answer. I'm retaining the figure that you mentioned. You said about 70,000, did you say, of tax evasion per person? Per Driver Inc. driver that's been lost to government coffers?
1,000 per driver,
17 000.
but just in that
Okay.
small sample.
17.
OK. Ben, on se doute qu'aujourd'hui, ça serait encore plus que ça.
So I would imagine that today it's higher than that even. The parliamentary secretary talked about some of the things the government did or demonstrated the willingness to do in this file. I'd like to know whether since 2022, 23, 24, again with Mr. Laskowski, have you seen this happen? Has this phenomenon gotten less or more pervasive?
Oh, so, are you holding up the red sign, Mr. Chair?
Not yet. It's almost
Okay.
there.
The answer is it's getting progressively worse. Inside the document that you have there, you will see the stats from ESDC presenting on this. And the one that I will say the most clear to understand what you are dealing with. When ESDC went to go visit these carriers, the trucking owners, let's be clear, the trucking owners, when they found that they were in gross violation, 25% of them, when they went back a month or 45 days later to see if they would get in compliance, they couldn't find them. They were gone. This is what we're dealing with.
Thank you very much. Next, we will go to Ms. Wien. Ms. Wien, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the witnesses for coming to join us today on an issue that deserves some important conversation and discussion. Ms. Walker talked about kind of the exploitation of folks in the sector, and also recognizing that some people who are doing this work, especially newcomers, came through legitimate pathways. I want to recognize that they came into those conditions and it sounds like are being exploited in ways that are really challenging. I'm curious about the HR pipeline challenges across the sector, and I wonder if Angela could comment on this. Where are the pain points? Where are we, and how do we forecast so we can build and ensure that this is an industry that has the resourcing from an HR perspective that we need?
Sure. Thank you, Member of Parliament, for that question. It's a concern for us in terms of that pipeline. As I mentioned, more and more carriers are having drivers come in saying they want to be paid under this model. We're hearing anecdotally from employers across the country around that. But the second thing is now it's spreading into other occupations, into more warehousing roles. That's a challenge. But it's also that image of the industry. This practice is harming our industry. The workers currently in the industry are discouraged by seeing this, by seeing workers being treated unfairly. And as was mentioned, recruiting new workers into our sector remains a challenge. We need more women, we need more young people, and this is not helping us. So that is a serious concern for an industry that continually has higher vacancies.
Could I ask the other witnesses to comment on this issue as well?
I'm trying not to hug the mic. I'm prone to it. So With regards to recruitment, I think the biggest takeaway you can do is this relates to Driver Inc. In particular parts of Canada, we did a survey as the Canadian Trucking Alliance, and we asked our carriers to ask their recruiters what is the biggest trend that they are seeing in the marketplace with regards to driver recruitment and hiring. Depending where you are, 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 drivers that walk through that door looking for a job, responding to an ad, want to be paid the Driver Inc. model. What does that mean for the future of our industry? It means this. It means if you don't choose to go to the underground economy, despite your principles, you will have no one to drive your truck. Drivers now, good drivers, law-abiding drivers, long-term drivers, are now going to the owners and saying, because we are in a horrible economy, raises are hard to come by. And they see what's happening in the marketplace. And they are saying to their owner, if I can't get a raise, I am leaving you. I am going down the street to the Driver Inc. company because everybody knows who they are. And I will start working in the underground economy too. Because, folks, this isn't hyperbole, and I'm not here to be political. Because the government has clearly said they don't care. So I will need to make that extra $15,000 to $20,000 a year in my pocket because it's a huge difference for my family. That is the crisis facing my membership, this industry, and public highways.
Do either Ms. Couture or Ms. Walker have anything else to add on that one?
Things really need to change. Driver Inc. is causing a lot of issues within our sector. It is forcing drivers out. We have professional drivers now that are questioning why they're doing it. We have drivers that are refusing to run highways 11 and 17 through Northern Ontario because I don't want to die. I don't want to die on those roads. I can tell you in the span of 6 months, I was hit 3 times on Highway 1117 through Northern Ontario. One of those times pushed me right into the rock cut. That's scary, especially when your teammate is sleeping in the bunk. So we really need to do something about these drivers that are coming in from these companies. It needs to stop. We are seeing where their trucks are breaking down. I had a female driver that was stranded in BC. She was out of Ontario. It was Christmas time. Her carrier told her, your problem, not mine. And she reached out for help. And CBSA had taken her truck out of service. So there she was sitting, no place to go. It's freezing cold outside in a truck that doesn't run. I flew that driver home.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Wien, and thank you, Ms. Walker. Prochainement, nous avons Monsieur Jason Groulot.
And now, Mr. Jason Coulot, you have the floor for 5 minutes. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee, and dear guests, thank you. I know that you're not here with joy. I'd like to talk about a strategy that profoundly marked the Beauce area and really harmed an entire community. A 26-year-old lost her life, a victim of a trucker-caused death, a trucker working for Driver Inc. company. There were serious maintenance issues with this truck, and it was transporting overly heavy loads. Canadian safety must be a priority. How can a Liberal government accept that that a company under investigation for such terrible violations could still be allowed to continue to work? It's an embarrassment. Mr. Laskowski, the question is for you. Could you quickly describe what the illegal strategy is of Driver Inc.?
So the strategy itself was born in 2011 when the moratorium on T4As was born. You marry that with the personal service business model, and as an owner, you're looking at $20,000 to $30,000 per year per driver in savings. There's other benefits as we move along. With regards to how it evolved then over time, is you started to attract non-professional owners. The owners I represent and the folks represent, when you get into trucking, it's not a business just to make money, it's a commitment to public safety. What happened with regards to the underground economy trucks were no longer looked at as a matter of security and responsibility, but as cash registers. And so as a cash register, you could care little about the principles of safety, care little about the families you impact, whether you're employees in a safe truck or those that share the road. And we have seen this over 14 years of deterioration. Shelley brought up Highway 1117. The Ontario Trucking Association surveyed 1,200 professional truck drivers. 90% of them said, I no longer want to drive Highway 1117 because I'm scared for my life, not because of poor maintenance or animals or potholes, because of my fellow truck drivers.
Question for Ms. Couture. Who are these companies? Where do they come from? They come from everywhere. They're in Ontario, from Quebec. They come from all over the place, from every jurisdiction. So who is incorporated? Who can incorporate as a driver Inc.? Anybody. When an immigrant comes in who's been sold a dream and they come here and their so-called employer tells them, well, sign here and you'll be incorporated and we'll pay you more. You won't need to pay taxes. So it's tax evasion right there, right from the start. People who are coming from other countries who come here on a closed permit have no choice. They have to stay with that so-called employer. So they do whatever has to be done. Now, let's give a concrete example. Company hires a driver. The driver is told on Monday evening, you have to go from Toronto and go make a delivery in Cornwall. But don't be late, because the client in Cornwall, if you're half an hour late, he's going to charge $1,000 in penalty. But do they all have the same training? They're like private companies? They don't provide training. It's all threats. They threaten the drivers. So the drivers are threatened and they're frightened because anything that happens, if they have a flat tire or an accident or they're stuck in traffic, if they get to Cornwall late, it's going to be called their fault and it's going to come out of their paycheck. So how long does it take for a driver now to get a driver's license, driver's Inc. license? I've seen some horror stories. Do you have any idea? Well, for some of them, it takes 6 to 8 weeks. Others, 1 weekend. 1 weekend? Yeah, a weekend. How can safety rules be respected with somebody who's just gotten 1 weekend's worth of training? It's unbelievable. Well, they don't show them everything. They don't provide the complete training. They just show them how to pass the test at the driver's bureau, whatever province has it. They just show them how to pass the test, not real training to be a professional driver. Do you feel safe on the road? No, I don't. What she just told us for Highway 11 and 17, I don't drive there. Thank you very much, Ms. Couture, and thank you, Mr. Grelot. Next, we'll be hearing from Sébastien Duval. 2.5 minutes. Thank you. Mr. Barcelou-Duval. Thank you. It's rather striking what you're saying. Let's continue with Ms. Walker and Ms. Couture. You've mentioned that these people are paying 38 cents a mile compared to 68 cents. I don't know what that means, 38 cents or 78 cents a mile. But in other words, what I can understand is they're paid roughly half of what a regular driver would get. And if that 38 cents a mile, if you work full time, what does that give you as a salary? We'll have to do it. In other words, so 78 cents an hour would give you $100,000 a year. So these people are getting, let's say, $50,000 instead of $100,000 a year. Now, what you mentioned is that there are a lot of people in there came from temporary immigration and their passports are confiscated. So they're threatened by their communities because they're only temporary and they could be kicked out at any time. Yesterday, we talked about 10 steps that should be implemented. Some of those steps were listed by Mr. Laskowski today. For example, more inspections from CRA, more audits with the SDC. We would go further. We talked about the need for automatic audits for any new company in the field, but also to eliminate temporary immigrants' right to incorporate so that they could work, but they could work as salaried employees so that they would be under supervision, and they would be and make sure that way that work providers would be responsible. Do you agree with these measures? Yes, absolutely. To prohibit somebody from the right to incorporate when they first get here, I'm talking about for people who are on temporary visas. They're given an opportunity to work as a salaried employee for a company and to learn what they don't know because they're coming from a country that has different customs and different standards. If they have to work as an employee, they have to have training provided to them, and they will learn what their rights and responsibilities are. Thank you very much. I have one question from Ms. Splinter. You talked about if you can't beat him, join him. We know that expression in French. So in other words, we'll do what they're doing. What do you think will be the consequence on the industry if everybody starts functioning like Driver Inc.? 15 seconds, please, for your answer.
To all workers, employers are very frustrated, and it's very hard for them to operate in an unfair market. So these are real concerns that I think impact all of us. We've heard today about the issues around training, around safety. We need to address this issue.
Merci beaucoup, Mr. Barcelona.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barcelona-Duval.
5 minutes, please.
Thank you. In regions like Haldeman, Norfolk, trucking is the backbone of our local economy. It supports our farmers, manufacturers, small businesses that depend on reliable transportation to move goods across the province and the country. But I'm even hearing there that the growing concern with Drivers Inc. model and that it's undermining competition, exploiting workers, and creating serious gaps in safety. This problem is something that has been building for years, and this Liberal government has failed to act. My question is for the Canadian Trucking Alliance. In your opinion, do you believe that the government should do more, like legislating a model of shared responsibility where incorporation remains possible, but carriers cannot use it to shield against safety and tax and labor obligations?
Thank you for the question. So incorporation is important to our industry as owner-operators. You have an example right at the end. Joanne and Shelley are owner-operators they are incorporated. In essence, they are small businesses, but they operate under the Small Business Act and run their businesses accordingly. What needs to be understood here is there are zero taxable benefits to incorporating as a truck driver, as a personal service business. Folks, if we had to do a quick show of hands, if I asked you, you can incorporate as a PSB, but you're going to pay more taxes, anybody want to sign up? Because that's the reality of the personal service business tax model. By the way, you forego overtime, you forego holiday pay, you forego 10 paid sick days, thousands of dollars, and you pay more tax.
And we also know that the current Liberal government has not taken the safety concerns of Drivers Inc. seriously. Transport Canada data itself shows that driver fatigue is a factor in a significant number of commercial vehicle crashes. Can you please tell me about the gaps in enforcing breaks, in enforcing rest time, in making sure that the cause of fatigue and the risk to citizens is not present on the highways, and how Driver Inc. affects that?
So, in short, I'll pass it to Jeff, and I'll just add a little comments. Just to be clarified for the committee members, enforcement of those rules are a provincial responsibility. But what we are asking the national government and national committees to do is to then begin to audit carriers. Over 90% of the trucking companies in this province, the province of Ontario, are known as satisfactory unaudited. What that means, folks, nobody knows nothing about them. Nobody's visited them, ever. We need to change our thinking of how we audit and we govern our trucking industry from a safety perspective. I take no great pleasure in what I'm about to say. Do not trust us. You can trust my members. They will always do the right thing. They will always put safety first. They will park a truck and park a driver if they believe that truck is unsafe or that driver isn't fit for the road. They will forgo the money. But there are a growing number of carriers who could care less, and you just heard about it. They will put a driver in a truck, in an unsafe truck, and they could care less about who they impact, because as I just said to you, 25% of carriers that ESDC goes back to see to enforce are gone.
Thank you for that answer. So who is responsible for, accountable for audit and compliance, for example, in the Drivers Inc. situation? Is it the carrier, the trucking company, the incorporated driver, or the driver? Or, for example, who makes sure that logs aren't fabricated, that loads aren't, that they're not taking too heavy of loads, that brakes are taking, that there's an audit and enforcement on the entire industry? Whose responsibility is that?
So the quick answer, from a labor perspective, it's shared by the ESDC or the Department of Labor and provincial authorities. From a tax perspective, it's CRA. And from a safety perspective, it's a joint process. The actual on the road is done by the provinces, but the federal government here in Transport Canada has a role. Maybe, Jeff, you can explain a little bit of the role of Transport Canada in truck safety.
Sure. So thank you for the question. So the role of Transport Canada governs hours of service, so how long drivers can drive, and they govern the transportation of dangerous goods. And they have delegated through the Motor Vehicle Safety Act or Motor Vehicle Transport Act the authority to the provinces and territories to manage truck safety. So Transport's role is really twofold. On the hour, they control the regulations, hours of service, dangerous goods, but they have also through the Motor Vehicle Transport Act, delegated the authority to the provinces to do the safety piece. So we feel there is a role for Transport Canada to develop a system where coordinated or consistent data goes in there, and then everybody can be measured the same. So that process is underway. We need that accelerated.
And how are
Thank you, Dr.
doing
Lewis. Unfortunately, we went over by 40 seconds. It was a great question, so I wanted to give you the time to get the answer.
Thank you.
And finally, for this round, we'll go to Mr. Greaves. Mr. Greaves, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to the witnesses. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to just clarify one point before going into questions in a different vein. So the first question is for Mr. Laskowski. In your opening remarks, you made reference to the year 2011, and I just want to clarify the significance of that year for this crisis in your industry that you're referring to. That's the year in which the CRA made these changes, imposing a moratorium on the T4As for workers in your sector. That's correct?
Correct.
So, okay, so that's if we had to choose a date at which this problem was set in motion, we might point to 2011 as when some of these decisions were implemented.
That's the beginning of it.
Okay, and it has continued until the present day, very, very clearly from your testimony. Thank you. So in 2011, so under the previous Conservative government, then is when
the moratorium was put under that government.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I'd like to clarify for myself the prevalence of this problem of misclassification of drivers in your sector. And so, for Ms. Splinter, if I may. The information that we were provided before this committee meeting indicated that as much as 63% of truckers in the province of Ontario may be misclassified. Is that correct or approximately correct to the best of your understanding?
To my understanding, for the work that we do at Trucking HR Canada, I can't quantify that. Our labour market information uses publicly available data. So as an example, census data, individuals, we don't know. They might not be reporting their employment status properly. They could be reporting themselves as an employee, but still be misclassified by their employer. So for us in the work that we do, it's a challenge. I would say that I think, to answer that question, investigation and enforcement by other federal and provincial authorities would be able to provide a more accurate or telling way to assess the level of driver inc.
Thank you for that. Perhaps to the CTA, just a general sense on the accuracy of that number, please.
I'll just turn it over to Jonathan.
Yes, that's right. So when you have ESDC audit activity going on right now through the misclassification team, they're finding about a 62% non-compliance rate in Ontario, over 40 in Quebec, and about 40% nationally.
Wow. So very high nationally, but Ontario does seem to be an outlier in terms of the severity of this problem. Is that correct?
It's the hub of it's it's sort of the mecca of trucking companies, right? It's the hub of it. But the answer is yes.
So, in that sense, I wonder if you could speak briefly to what actions the Ontario government may have taken to try to address this significant problem within the Ontario trucking sector specifically. Has there been action taken under the Ontario Labour Code, or has the Ford government been responsive to your groups or others' efforts on this?
So I think, the from a labor standpoint, the answer is yes. That the WSIB has launched. They used to do random audits in Ontario. And now what they do focused audits. And it's around coverage of WSIB. And Jonathan, did you want to provide some of the work there? And they're finding they stopped random audits because they're signing such gross compliance.
Instead of randomly auditing companies in the sector, they started focusing their efforts looking for misclassification. And since they've begun, they've found hundreds and hundreds of companies guilty of misclassification. Tens of millions of dollars in premiums have been recovered. So quite successful enforcement action on misclassification.
Okay, great. Well, then I guess my question for all of the witnesses or anybody who'd care to answer would be, in light of the scale of the misclassification problem that you've identified across many provinces, but also including Ontario, and some of the issues that have been raised around training and certification and so forth, is it the recommendation of the witnesses that the trucking sector in Canada would be best served if those responsibilities for regulation and oversight and safety were a federal responsibility, not a provincial responsibility?
Boy, you're opening a can of worms on that one.
Never.
So this is the reality. The reality is that the federal government controls interprovincial trade. So any truck that crosses the provinces, it has deferred the responsibility of the enforcement of those regulations to the provinces through a series of codes which standardize. Could the federal government do a better job of providing more accurate information with regards to consistency across the industry? Yes. Could it act as a better way to coordinate harmonization of safety regulations? Yes, there is an expanded role of that. With regards to the provinces and how they do, yes, there needs to be not an evolutionary process with regards to safety enforcement, a revolutionary one. I will emphasize what I'm saying again, without great pride, with actually quite cringe, and my members cringe. Do not trust our industry. Provincial regulations are based on trust. It is based on the idea that companies will follow the law if they are told what the law is. Remember this when you walk away from this table. 25% of companies, when they were told they were wrong in doing something, disappeared. They are gaming the system because we do not have the proper oversight and enforcement and penalties.
Thank you very much, Mr. Greaves. And I'd like to, on behalf of all members of this committee, thank our witnesses for giving us their time and sharing their expertise and their testimony with us today. I wish you safe travels home. I'm going to suspend colleagues for 5 minutes to allow for the clerk to welcome our next round of witnesses. The meeting is suspended to the call of the chair. I'd now like to welcome our witnesses in the second panel. Colleagues, we have, à titre personnel, Steve Bourgeois, consultant.
Individual, Steve Bourgeois, consultant, welcome.
Ontario, Ken Adams, chairman of the board. And from Kriska Transportation Group, we have Mr. Mark Seymour, chief executive officer, joining us by video conference. Thank you all for taking the time to appear before us today. On va commencer avec Monsieur Bourgeois. La parole est à vous.
Begin with Mr. Bourgeois. You have the floor, and you have 5 minutes for your opening comments. Hello, everybody. My name is Steve Bourgeois, consultant and trainer. I'm a certified trainer with the Quebec Transport Commission. I've worked a trucker for years. I've done even the ice roads in my territories. I love my field, but it's no longer what it used to be, unfortunately. Thank you for hearing me today on behalf of the SCCTC organization. We want to defend driver safety, road safety, the dignity and legitimacy of our profession. We are speaking on behalf of 15,000 citizens who've signed our petition to ask for your help. The Bloc Québécois answered by having us here today, so thank you very much. The Drivers Inc., as it applies to taxation and jobs, has changed since 2010, especially in recent years. I'd like to tell you about a different aspect of Drivers Inc. I'd like to talk about phantom drivers, the under-the-table drivers. Using these illegal drivers is increasingly happening in Canada. They get around safety standards, insurance obligations, and training requirements. They endanger road users. They make it harder for our systems and responsible companies to survive, and they devalue the profession of truckers. An increase in serious accidents in Quebec has been demonstrated since 2023 to 2024. The increase was 35% in fatalities. 2025 is probably going to be even worse because some of the people we're speaking to are telling us that the increase has been quite drastic. There's unfair competition to companies who are respecting the existing standards. We're not against integrating new workers. On the contrary, we need new workers. We're against the exploitation of immigrants and the gigification of our industry. Transportation is a regulated profession. It's demanding and it's essential for public safety. There are solutions that can be implemented. Increase control on site, on the roads, by competent authorities, immigration, RCMP, Department of Transit, police, and inspectors, and clear sanctions for companies who are hiring people illegally. Hiring is even like the unofficial word because some of them don't even get paid. We are proposing concrete solutions federally. We would say that you should create a national database of insurance accessible from all provinces to verify validity of documents, as has been said. In the U.S., there's the MCS 90, and we could use that in Canada. Strengthen immigration controls and worker status with systematic verification of work permits and student visas, because we also have drivers who are here on student visas. They're driving a truck without a license, without insurance, and without training. Harmonize safety standards and training standards with national awareness campaigns, including Standard 16, etc., with schools such as one next to me, who give more training than what the government insists on. In conclusion, respecting the rules is not an option. It's a condition for trust. We call upon you to show solidarity, vigilance, and action. Our organization is mobilized to defend the rights of transportation workers and guarantee safe, fair, and professional service for all. I'm available to answer any questions, even in English.
Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Bourgeois. Vous avez le choix
Thank
de
you very
parler.
much, Mr. Bourgeois. You have a choice of speaking in French and English as you wish.
The floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you for inviting me today, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Ken Adams, and I am the chairman of the board for the Truck Training Schools Association of Ontario. We represent over 40 independent regulated schools committed to safety, compliance, and excellence, and have been doing so for the last 30 years. While I've only been in this industry the past 11 years, I've seen a great decline in the quality and the treatment of drivers. I served with as a member of the Toronto Police Service and spent my first 8 years of duty in a traffic unit, and this is where my passion for road safety comes. I currently own and operate a truck training school right here in Ottawa, Crossroads Truck and Career Academy, as well as sitting on various committees with the Ontario government and participate in stakeholder consultations and with the Ministry of Transportation. So why we're here, Drivers Inc. Misclassification didn't start on the highway. It began in the classroom. We've seen carriers buy or influence schools to fast track them through bare bones programs, undermine the provincial licensing standards, and shift the training liability away from these carriers. This isn't theory. Our members lose revenue, accreditation, and staff to these cut-out corner outfits that, while public safety and the students' well-being are all suffering. Good schools are closing their doors, and even more non-compliant schools enter through those doors. It's a systematic threat to training schools. Conflict of interest. Carrier-owned or affiliated schools exist to feed cheap, unprotected contractors, quotations, into fleets, never to produce a qualified or safe driver. They compress their curriculums, key modules, hours of service, vehicle inspection protocols, emergency response, air brake certification are all truncated or completely skipped. Document fraud and bribery. Records are falsified. Examiners are being bribed, and unqualified graduates emerge with full licenses to operate 80,000-pound trucks on our city streets and highways. I address every single one of my classes, letting them know that they are driving killing machines. What they hit, they destroy. This is a serious job, and we can't have under-trained or fast-track people out on the roads. Offshore payments and exploitation of the students. Students will wire tuition via WhatsApp to anonymous accounts and then find themselves trapped in labor trafficking conditions. Make no mistake about it, labor trafficking is in trucking. So we have real-world consequences. Safety risks. Undertrained drivers mean more incidents, unfortunately, fatalities, roadside defects and compliance violations, rising costs for the honest carriers, and endangering every single road user. We have the erosion of quality providers. Reputable schools cannot compete on the price or speed, and we're risking losing our best instructors and our best schools. Workforce integrity. Newcomers who drive our industry growth are misclassified, underpaid, not paid overtime, being told that they owe the company for their immigration costs and training. They're being pushed to work well over the hours of service that they should be, again, endangering everybody's lives. And they're too fearful to speak up. And they're stripped of any kind of health benefits or benefits in that matter. So, solutions, ownership transparency. Require all licensed schools to publicly disclose any controlling interests and related party ties to carriers. Mandate unannounced provincial audits of curriculum delivery, equipment condition, instructor credentials, and student files. Partner with the CRA to trace irregular tuition flows and offshore payments. It was spoken a while before, a national trucking credential. We need to adopt a harmonized curriculum with an embedded 8-hour labor trafficking response module to protect our newcomers. Issue a blockchain secured safety passport, linking verified hours, audit history, and real-time verification. And trainee protections. Mandate orientation on labor rights, tax laws, and compliant mechanisms to support these newcomers. From a joint and federal industry body, labor program, CRA, Transport Canada, WTFC, TTSAO, CTA to share data on these repeat offenders and emerging risks. This committee has a rare opportunity to end the upstream, implement the measures to help protect the students, and we can have safe roads.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adams. Next, we will go to Mr. Seymour. Mr. Seymour, the floor is yours for your opening remarks. You have 5 minutes, please, sir.
Thank you for this opportunity to the committee. My name is Mark Seymour, as introduced, Chief Executive Officer of the Kriska Group based in Prescott, Ontario, former chair of the Ontario Trucking Association and the Canadian Trucking Alliance. I started as a truck driver at 18 years of age. I'm 61 now. The privilege of spending 40 plus years in the industry. And with my extended time and experience, I can honestly say the Drivers Inc. model has significantly weakened our industry in many ways. Certainly safety has been mentioned a number of times, labor, respect, public perception, and of particular concern to me is the competitive standpoint by which we've really been presented a liability. Our industry has been taken over by the underground economy at many levels. And if you don't act fast, fleets like mine, 47 years in business, I'm a second generation proud trucking company owner. We simply won't be around. We follow the rules. We have grown our business from 3 trucks to 800 trucks by following the rules. Our people pay their taxes. We take the taxes. We provide holidays and benefits, and we do all those things properly. And that all costs. And those costs are something that are very important to our industry and to our country. We simply won't exist because we can't compete. We have intentionally had to shrink our business in the last 3 years by upwards of 25% because we simply cannot compete. And we can't attract new people to our business and frankly to our industry. We operate about 800 trucks and we have a very low turnover relative to industry standards, less than 20%. That's still approximately 160 truck drivers a year that we need to hire. Well over 50% of those that apply only interested in driving as contractors and not as employees. It's a widespread situation that it's made its way into recruiting and made it incredibly difficult for us to grow. The situation has really stifled our ability to continue to invest as we traditionally have in new equipment. I'm certainly not going to suggest that we will not maintain our equipment or that we will not continue to replace equipment, but we certainly can't replace it at the rate and pace that we would like to and the way we have in the past. The impact, folks, on the 10 paid sick holidays is a tremendous cost to our business and to our industry, and particularly those that respect the law and adhere to it. That in itself is incredibly punitive to us, those that respect the law and provide those 10 paid sick days. Let me make it clear. I support competition. I've been in this business for over 40 years and we've survived. In fact, we've grown considerably. But competition must be based on service and price, where price is from the same foundation of all that compete. And that is in a regulatory way and an administrative way, that there's no corners cut, there's no shortcuts made, that we simply do the right thing the right way all the time. So I'm certainly not here looking for help to run my business. I'm here to help support making it right for all those that are simply not doing it the right way. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Seymour. On va commencer avec Monsieur Groslo. Monsieur Groslo.
We'll begin with Mr. Groslo. You have the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. And dear guests, thank you for being here to discuss this huge problem. Drivers Inc. is a very big problem. I have a question for Mr. Bourgeois. You're a trainer and a consultant, and you have several years of experience. I heard somebody say a few minutes ago that in under 2 days, somebody can get a driver's license and take a truck on the road. Are you aware of this? Do you truck as well? I was a driver for several years. 2 days is even long. Some people can do it in 2 or 4 hours. It's like learning a new song. Once you learn the song, you walk around the truck. They take a smaller truck with just one axle, a trailer with just one, and they have them drive on a few streets, as long as you don't go up on a sidewalk and respect whatever you can, and they'll get a license. The next day, they're going to get into a huge truck with thousands of kilos and drive for hours. That's how it works now. It makes no sense. How much time do you think it should take for rigorous training for safety of our citizens to be respected? You're a specialist. How long would it take to train somebody safely? You're talking about Quebec? We have something for several years, and even if you graduate with that degree, we ask businesses to continue training in-house to ensure that it's understood. So we're talking about 5 months of training that's intensive, and there's all kinds of regulations that are studied as well, and the hours of service, etc. Companies have to continue to help young drivers when they climb aboard the truck so they can be safe. Right off the bat, several companies will keep them in Quebec before having them leave the province after a certain amount of time. But that's an in-house decision on the part of the companies because they have a good conscience. And I was talking about certain things, but I was always told if you haven't driven for 3 years, you can't get a 29. But the other people don't even have licenses, and they're being given these things. There's people with no driver's licenses. There have been all kinds of interventions with Quebec drivers inspectors. There are people driving with no license, no inspection, and they're driving a truck. What about government standards? The Liberal government, what is it doing to ensure that their licenses? Is there some way of doing this to check licenses? Well, there is the standard for obligatory licensing, but it's not actually functioning in Quebec. It's been tabled, but it's not functioning. I think it should be coming in December. It's a bit ambiguous, so we're still waiting for it. But what about Drivers Inc.? Earlier, someone was saying that they were threatened with delivering quickly. If not, they weren't going to be paid. Are you aware of this? Reports came out, I think, in Alberta. I can send you a copy, no problem. It's available. It's public. There are people from the same nationality that have their people come saying, okay, let's say it's $10,000 to get you here. Once you're here, as the woman was saying, they take your passports, they keep them in Canada, and they say, now you owe me $40,000. And you have to drive and drive and drive. In the contract, it says delivery has to be done safely. It doesn't say it has to be done safely or not if there are 2-3 people in a truck to make a delivery. We've got all kinds of issues. Somebody spent 57 hours in a row driving with a few breaks. Is that normal? You would expect them to be tired. What are the standards? The standards are 13 hours per day and 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours consecutively before starting up at work again. And there's also a break of 2 hours that has to be taken during the day for a total of 10 hours break per 24 hours. But some people don't respect that. There's some people who drive, even though we have electronic standards for driving. Question could not be heard. Answer, no. There's no tracking, no thoroughness. Anybody could do anything. Is that essentially what you're saying? Well, right now, people can cheat very easily. Is the government aware of this? Well, we're here today. That's why we're here. We're talking about issues in the transportation. I talked about safety as an issue. I didn't even talk about the whole issue of money and technologies. We could talk about that for hours. I don't think I have that time here today, but I'd be very happy to come back. No problem to explain everything to you about what's going on. Just change one letter. Ask for a new logbook. You're talking about a letter? Well, a driver's license starts with BM Bourgeois. I'll write letter A. Oops, mistake. And now, everything will still work and the inspector won't see anything. That's why one of the conditions asked for by the Bloc was to have people, when the information wasn't entered properly, to have people off the road automatically. Because people don't have the tools to do all of this. There has to be changes. In the U.S., it's stricter. It's a computerized system with driver's logs. Thank you, Mr. Bourgeois. My next question is for Mr. Adams. You are the president, and you have trucker training in Ontario, if I'm not mistaken. I saw a CBC Marketplace documentary on MELT schools that don't seem to be serious. Could you say a few words about them?
Popping up all over the place, and it is because of just that. Marketplace was not just a fabrication. That's what's happening out there really in the world. You talk about what do we think the number of hours that is good for training? At my school, my minimum is 200. The minimum in this province is 103. A lot of schools aren't even doing 103.5. That is a big problem.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Adams.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adams. Thank you, Mr. Rouleau. Now, Mr. Lauzon, you have the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I'd first like to thank all of today's witnesses for this very important matter, because we all care about safety of our constituents and the population and the well-being of the industry. I've also been a professional vocational training teacher for 21 years, and I know about a school for drivers. And I could sense how thorough the training was, how the young students were well prepared with a number of hours in the field. We always worked together with the province. Since 1980, this was federal jurisdiction, was transferred to the provinces. So with everything you've said to us today, do you think we should take back the flame and become responsible for road transportation and training again at the federal level, or should we leave it with the provinces as is currently the case? Over to you, Mr. Bourgeois. Well, if you leave it with the provinces, maybe there should be some follow-up. Like right now, there's going to be compulsory training starting in Quebec. I'd like to know who's going to make sure that there's an inspection, that there's any auditing. We look what's happened with CBC Marketplace. You saw what happened in Ontario. I hope it's not going to be the same thing with us. Because we're going to start seeing things in 2 years, because we'll need a much more thorough verification system and controls. Could you say more about training that's offered in Quebec? Who is providing the training? How are the licenses drafted in Quebec? I think you're only in Quebec. Maybe this question would also apply to Mr. Adams and to Mr. Seymour as well. But give me an idea of the process. What do you have to do to get without talking about immigration, just about a license, how do you have to get a license to become a truck driver in Quebec? If you're a Canadian, a Quebecer, what is the exact procedure? Right now in Quebec, there is no compulsory training. They'll ask you for a document to fill out for medical information to see if you're fit to drive a heavy vehicle. And then you'll have a temporary permit to learn the song, for safety. Right now, that's what there is. There are little schools that invent themselves and declare themselves to be schools left, right, and center to say what you need to do to be able to pass the test at the SAC, the Quebec Drivers Licensing Bureau. And then they'll have people drive with a very easy little truck, and they'll get a license. What about the jurisdiction responsible for making this licensing too easy? Should we be attacking the Quebec government at this point, or their organization, the Quebec Car Insurance Association, to make it so difficult? I got a Class 3 license. My friends said to me when I got to the license level, they said, "Hey, you should have gone right away for Class 1. It would have been done." But I wasn't trained for Class 1. So is the rule something that should be changed by the provinces? Yes. Mr. Seymour, earlier we heard from a witness who said a sentence that really got a reaction from us. It said, "Don't trust entrepreneurs." Entrepreneurs have a responsibility, and they're basically, you're an entrepreneur, you're an exemplary entrepreneur with your association of several companies together. You've evolved over time, always on the straight and narrow. Could you tell me about that witness comment? How could a government hear a witness saying, don't trust us, don't trust our business people because they're the ones who are at fault? What can we do with that?
Well, I think I would like to add how it's really important to trust and verify. And I think what would be best said is simply that we have too much of an honor system that takes place right now, and I think the honor system has found its way into abuse. And we have enough regulation, but not enough with teeth. We have enough regulation without enforcement. So I think what we have done is extended the benefit of trust to all when not all deserve the same. I think it's very clear that not all people that cross the border have been given fast cards or Nexus cards. There's a trust and verify, and I think the piece that's missing very much so is the verify piece through audit, through enforcement, I guess, and through audit and verification. So that would be my best expansion of do not trust anyone.
Merci. Encore pour vous. Peut-être, Monsieur Adam.
Thank you. Perhaps Mr. Adams could answer this. The Canadian Labour Code prohibits misclassification. Everything is there. We've got the rules. We've got road supervisors or surveyors. We have police. We have a licensing operation. The structure exists to prevent these people from misbehaving. But why is the application in the field not being applied the way it's supposed to be with the regulations that already exist?
We don't have enough. We do not have enough investigators. We do not have enough police officers on the roads. We just don't have enough. And we've allowed this to get out of control. And this didn't happen overnight. It's not going to get fixed overnight. But together with all of us and, with all of my fellow industry leaders that are here today, we can get this fixed.
Oh, pardon. C'est correct, Monsieur Lauzon.
Go ahead, Mr. Lauzon. Thank you very much, Mr. Lauzon.
Prochainement, nous avons Monsieur Barcelou-Duval.
Now, Mr. Barcelou-Duval, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. And thanks to our 3 witnesses this afternoon. I think this is a very important topic, as I've already said, but I think we can't overemphasize it because we're talking about people's lives that are being lost on the roads. I think it's very important to save lives that are endangered by improperly trained, exploited drivers who are not qualified. Beginning with you, Mr. Bourgeois, you're a safety consultant and a compliance and training consultant. In your experience, what are the main signs by which we could detect that we're dealing with a driver who is not in compliance on the road? Well, on the road, we can see them coming easily, not because we're better, but it's easy to spot them. They're going to be driving too fast because they don't necessarily respect the rules for, let's say, maximum at 105. And they also, they change lanes. They don't respect their lanes. They don't know how to take corners. They go up on the curb. They rip off branches of trees. One was on the Victoria Bridge. And the Victoria Bridge in Montreal is a no-truck bridge. And there he was on the bridge because he doesn't know how to read. They don't know how to read the road signs. So there are all kinds of training that's necessary there. Are they able to understand our language? We saw driver's exams with people who had microphones and a camera to be able to know what the answers were, and they would hear somebody whispering the answer into their ears. You could take a photo of the questions by phone, translate it into their language, and then he just has to tick in the right places. It doesn't make any sense, and then you wonder why people are dying on the roads. We see these things one after the other. We see all kinds of inquiries, Manitoba, Alberta, and Ontario. Not Quebec, because we haven't done anything yet, but it's going to happen. We're trying to talk about this every week. We have to make quick progress because they're much more fast than we are. has nothing to do with immigration. We have to respect the same rules as the same laws. In Quebec, you need 36 months of Class 5 to get your heavy driver's license. But then after 2 months, they get that license. How is it possible? We got an 18-year-old driving. I have my son who drives trucks with me. He's driving a truck with me. He knows how to drive a manual, but he's only got one class because we're a closed circuit. He wants to get this, but he's not allowed to until he gets his 36 months. That's how we've had our professional drivers in Quebec, because it went from generation to generation. I'm sure that's the same with Mr. Mark there as well, the same principle. Do you know a lot of professional drivers? You've got quite a network. What about the professional drivers now? How do they see their future in the sector? For them, it's looking very grim. They're thinking of dropping out and going to other areas, maybe even going back to school. There's bus driver openings in Montreal. They're thinking of going there. And they don't want to go on Highway 17. And then we'll see tonight what happens with 389 to go to Fairmont. It's a very dangerous road, quote unquote. If you're not professional, okay, but they've never driven in snow. And, I'm going to target India, maybe not okay, but all those people, sorry, CBC Marketplace, but, they go onto that 389 with unsafe trucks. They don't have the proper tires, and they're driving in snow, and then you've got all kinds of accidents. So our professional drivers are afraid. They want to leave the field. Somebody who comes here, we're talking about immigration, somebody who comes as a temporary immigrant who's just set foot in the country and who got a few hours of training and is going to start their own quote-unquote business and drive all over Canada. What do you think? It's impossible. You can't do that. You need much more training. Just, a flatbed, there's standard 10 that you have to respect. 50% of the load, you have certain rules. I see sometimes on the 401, I see these drivers and they're short chains. They're not properly attaching things. They're talking about farm tractors with barely one little strap in the back and one in the front. You're supposed to be using chains to attach them. And are these people poorly intentioned, or are they victims? They're victims, very clearly. They came here. They're told this is how it works here, but that's not true. There are standards that have to be respected. The people who bring them here make them believe that this is the way things work. And that's why they'll go incorporate for tax purposes. They'll be given keys to the truck. They'll climb up and off they go. They're not educated. They're not trained. So, yes, they're victims. Thank you. I'd like to ask Mr. Seymour a question. In your company, how does it work? You talked about cutting 25% of your operations and of your staff. How are you able to survive and remain competitive when there's this kind of illegal or, unfair competition from people who aren't respecting the rules?
Well, it's a real challenge. You have to pivot and adjust. And, one thing our industry is known for is its resiliency. And, we're just doing what we have to do the best we can. And I'm not here to look for a life preserver by any means. It's just not fair. And it's really, really hurting the hardworking men and women. And I want to expand on something that was said earlier. I don't blame the hardworking men and women who are doing what they're doing because they don't know any better. They haven't been properly trained. They just want to work. They want to earn. They want to provide for their families. It's not intentional, I don't think. It's simply a matter of training and audit and compliance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Seymour. Merci beaucoup, Mr. Barcel-Duval.
Thank you, Mr. Barcel-Duval. Next, Mr. Lewis.
Sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the committee. Thank you also to the witnesses. Really good testimony, both the first hour and the second hour this morning, and certainly an important, not important, vital discussion here today. After 10 years of Liberal inaction, quite frankly, we have communities that are at risk. We have Canadian families that are either being seriously hurt on Canadian roads or being killed. And so this discussion is is very important. My riding of Essex is right next to the busiest international border crossing in North America. So I have an awful lot of transport traffic that goes back and forth across the 401 corridor between our neighbors in Michigan and our neighbors, or in our country, of course. So my first question to you, Mr. Adams, and by the way, thank you for your service with the Toronto Police Department. My first question to you, sir, is you had mentioned about 103.5 hours is the industry standard for training?
The minimum standard allowed in this province.
Okay, thank you. So that's in Ontario.
That's in Ontario.
Ontario, okay. And your company offers 200 hours of training. How many hours does a person need to sit in a classroom? And then how many hours would a person need to sit in a cab with an instructor to be safe on the roads, in your opinion?
My opinion, minimum 200 hours. So in classroom, minimum 40. As my friend beside me says, you need to know your log books. Well, we don't use log books. We use ELDs now. And just for everyone's well-known, you can go through a back door on those and change them around. So we can still, the ELDs was there to remove the logbook issue, or you could have 2 and 3. ELDs can be also compromised. So we have ELD training, we have load securement training, we have laws and regulations, weights and limitations, safety compliance, map and trip planning, because GPS doesn't always work. This is the base that these students need before they even touch a truck. And then when we get out there, they need to be behind the wheel, they need to be driving it, they need to be backing it up, inspecting it, making sure it is safe for the road. And so my minimum program at my particular school is 200 hours. The next level up is 250. But again, we're not even seeing 103.5 being done. It's get them through as fast as we can, get them on the road, make us money. How do people run off the road and flip trucks on a beautiful sunny day? Okay, if we get a massive snowstorm, okay, but not on a beautiful sunny day. There's a lack of training, and it's serious.
Thank you, Mr. Adamson. Back to you, sir, through you, Mr. Chair. So in your opinion, does MELT work? Does it work in Ontario? Does it work in Canada?
My opinion, MELT was a good starting point, but it certainly is not enough.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Mr. Seymour, if I could please go to you, sir. I found it absolutely gut-wrenching and astonishing when you had mentioned that just a couple of years ago you had to throttle back your company 25%. In a time when that we need more transport trucks delivering our goods. I know my region of Essex, just so many greenhouses, so many greenhouses that we send 90% of our produce to the state. So my question for you, sir, is does your company have an issue in that the Canadian melt type, if you will, is not compliable in the United States, and or vice versa? So being a cross-border community, I'm just curious if your drivers run into this problem in the United States.
Well, our drivers don't, because our drivers, we're a company that will hire a newly licensed driver, but we spend a tremendous amount of time researching what school they went to, and certainly Mr. Adams' school is one. In fact, my son went to Ken's school. We accredit the schools where they come from. Then we invest another 3 to 6 weeks of training in that newly licensed driver, which would account for hundreds, of more hours. So our drivers don't have an issue when in the United States because they're safe and they're compliant and they're well trained. Now accidents happen. So things can happen, but when audited and when checked and when in an accident, God forbid, we don't have a problem because we've provided due diligence and it doesn't cause a problem for us.
Thank you to the witnesses. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis, and thank you, Mr. Seymour. Next, we'll go to Mr. Kellaway. The floor is yours, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the witnesses being here today. Like my colleague to my right, my career predominantly was involved in training and development at the Nova Scotia Community College. And when I hear examples of people getting their license for a particular lever in terms of truck driving in 2 days, in 3 days, my jaw and my tongue drop. And I think throughout this this testimony, we talk about training and with safety and information sharing and enforcement, which are predominantly, if not solely, focused on the province. And when I think of training and development in particular, I want to kind of maybe just take a couple of these. So it's the provincial responsibility, and Mr. Adams, you talked about the fact that, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, sir, but in terms of there's not enough of enforcement. There's not enough of people doing the due diligence to ensure that in no world should you complete a program in 2 days to drive a truck. 2 weeks. You said 200 hours, I think, was what you were referencing. So in terms, Mr. Adams, I'll start with you and then I'll go to Mr. Bourgeois. What did the province, give us some examples of training provincially? What needs to be tightened? And, we can get into the money because obviously everything comes down to investments. If we want to have skilled people, we need skilled training. We need skilled enforcement to keep people safe. Can you kind of drill down in terms of just training of what could be done provincially? And then, a bit of a theme is what can the federal government do to strengthen what is the responsibility of the provinces, or should we? I yield the floor to you.
I absolutely think that we talked about a national training standard. I think that every trainer across this province should have to be certified, and there be a database for that certification. At least we know that that person has been trained properly. We need to get more investigators or hidden investigators, like we saw in Marketplace, into these schools where there's a constant complaint. There is data out there. We know where the truck accidents, where they're happening, who's driving them, and MELT requires every single school to enter into a ministry database that person's name before they are allowed to take the actual road test, meaning that everyone knows what school that person went to. If that school has a disproportionate amount of people having accidents, well, then maybe there's a problem at that school.
Sir, on that?
Pardon?
Can you chime in? Any thoughts on that, sir?
Exactly like he's saying. We need more hours, and we need some people to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. Like in Melt, they were just paying, do some stuff, and nobody was looking on them until they find out. So we have to do something more than that. Province or federal, maybe have to do some spot check, like he said. Undercover or whatever, you can do whatever you need to. People are dying on the road right now, and we need to do something like that.
I don't know how much time I have left, Mr. Chair. 1 minute. I mean, one of the striking things for me listening to this testimony is there's a couple of things. It is around the training side, and it's around the enforcement side. And if you have private or not private trainers training people, in, again, 8 hours, that should be at least a 200-hour program. There's a fundamental breakdown in terms of what the provincial government is doing. And that's not passing the buck. So I want to say, what could the federal government do to assist the provincial government? Is it more investment? Is it strategic investment in enforcement? Is it strategic investment in other types of programs? Because the reality is the provincial government is responsible for it. But what would be some pathways to help if you had the pen from a federal perspective, sir?
I think I would have the national training standard, and I think I would have some very severe penalties for people that are violating this. I mean, there's an individual right now who killed a 35-year-old lady and her 7-year-old child, took off, left the country, just returned, and he's out on bail. So we have to have some very strict laws and sentencing to stop it.
Seize the passport. We can seize a passport or just put a flag on the airport. So make sure they don't go back. They just caught one in the U.S., bring back to Quebec. He killed somebody on the Quebec. He just came back. He walked through Mexico to get in the U.S. He did something wrong in California. He thought nobody would see him, and they flew him back to Quebec to make sure he's going to comply in court.
Merci beaucoup, Mr. Bourgeois. Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Bourgeois. And now it'll be Mr. Barcelou-Duval. You have 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. A lot has been said with my colleagues across the table about the responsibilities of provinces or Quebec or other provinces when it comes to training. I think it's good to talk about this because there is some component of this. But if I look at the data that is currently public regarding the number of drivers or number of trucking companies who don't have any employees, if I look at Statistics Canada, in Quebec, 5 years ago, they're about 9,000, and now we're talking about 11,000. In Ontario, there were 30,000 5 years ago, and today we're talking about 50,000. So 2,000 more Drivers Inc. drivers in Quebec. At the same time, more than 20,000 additional Drivers Inc. drivers in Ontario, and there could be other people operating completely illegally. So I think we see to what extent this is exploding, and there is all kinds of training, fly-by-night training that's being given. Now, interprovincial transportation is federal jurisdiction. The federal government is delegating its powers to issue fitness certificates to provincial authorities, but the federal government could take back this authority from a province if there's a concentrated phenomenon. For example, let's say targeting Ontario by saying, look, if you don't make the necessary corrections, you will no longer be allowed to issue fitness certificates. Do you think that's a possible solution? Yes, to stop the hemorrhage. Yes, I think it would be a good solution while the situation gets corrected, because right now in Ontario, it's exploded, and that we saw the inquiry. But even what we're seeing in Quebec, most vehicles in the pound come from Ontario for problems with insurance, licensing, or permitting. So I'm not saying that everybody is problematic, but there's a major problem in Ontario, and perhaps that should be controlled right away. That and immigration, those are the two things that have to be stopped now. We have to see what's going on. Thank you very much. Mr. Adams, Marketplace reported on a training that could cost under $1,000. How much does it cost at your school to be trained, and do you think that $1,000 is enough to provide real training?
To take a 200-hour course at my school is $10,000. There is no way, that wouldn't pay for the fuel in the truck. That wouldn't pay for my trainer's wages for that time. It's impossible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adams. Merci, Mr. Barcelou-Duval.
Thank you,
Next,
Mr. Barcelou-Duval.
Mr. Barrett for 4 minutes, followed by Ms. Wien for 4 minutes. Mr. Barrett, the floor is yours. 4 minutes, please.
Thanks very much. I just want to quickly say thank you to Joanne Couture, who was here on the last panel, and for her role in the trucking industry, as well as welcome Mr. Seymour. These are two constituents of the great riding of Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes. It's a pleasure to have your voice elevated in Parliament today. My first question for you, Mr. Seymour, is if you think that the current enforcement by the Government of Canada and federal agencies is enough with respect to labor laws, tax laws, and immigration laws?
Or do I think it's enough?
Yeah, do you think it's enough?
No. Or we wouldn't have this problem. We wouldn't have this problem. So I think there's regulation in place, but there's not enough oversight and enforcement. So it's the enforcement piece that's missing. I don't think there's necessarily a need for more regulation, but there's one hell of a need for enforcement on the existing regulation.
Right. Can you tell me about the impact on local jobs and I should note that your company, Kriska, has consistently been named one of Canada's best managed companies, and congratulations on that.
Thank you.
But it sounds like some of those jobs are disappearing with the with the expansion of this Drivers Inc. model. What's the impact on the number of jobs that you're able to offer in Prescott, Ontario, by the current state of affairs?
Well, each time we contract our fleet, there's not an equal number of non-driving staff. But as I said earlier, the contraction of the size of our business has been about 25% over the last 2 years. Not all in 1 month, but it's been a slow burn over time. And we've just found it through the growth of Driver Inc. There's been a contraction of non-driver Inc. carriers and employers. And our economy isn't growing. The movement of goods is not growing. Therefore, the need for more capacity is not there. It's simply a transition from the tax-paying, law-abiding trucking companies towards the movement of Driver Inc. So it's been, our employment numbers have been cut by 25%. We've gone from approximately 1,200 employees to approximately 950 employees in the last 2 years, simply because of this. It has not been because of any other reason other than this.
I have just about a minute left, and I have two questions for you. One is if you think that National Safety Code 16 should be mandatory, and if that would help if it was enforced. And my second question is if you can just quickly comment on the effect of to the traveling public with the Driver Inc. model. How safe are people driving on Canada's highways with drivers who haven't met the standards that you require of your drivers?
Well, on the National Safety Code, I think if there's going to be a national code, there needs to be national oversight and national enforcement and national audit. So without all four pieces of that, it's not going to work. On the safety, I think it stands to reason. If people are out driving a big truck fully loaded at 80,000 pounds with limited training, it stands to reason they're not going to be as safe as the alternative, someone who's properly trained and properly prepared to do that type of work. So it's just common sense to me.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Seymour, and thank you, Mr. Barrett. And finally for today, we'll go to Ms. Wien. Ms. Wien, the floor is yours. You have 4 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you again to the witnesses for joining us for another really important round of conversation on this topic. And Mr. Adams, thank you for keeping our streets safe in Toronto. Every time I pass a truck when I'm on my bicycle, I hold my breath just in case because I'm nervous as a cyclist and I want to feel safe around on our roads. And I think every Canadian deserves that. Always. That's what we do. And those bike lanes are also important. I wanted to ask just a quick follow-up question to Mr. Seymour. The reduction of your workforce, do you have a sense of whether or not those drivers have left trucking in general, or have they gone to a different model? I'm curious if you have a sense of that.
Well, they wouldn't leave our model for the other model because they would not want to give up their employment rights and protections, their holidays, their sick pay, et cetera, et cetera. Most of our contraction has been through attrition, through retirement. And in some cases, they've moved on to a different profession. So it's been over time. It's been a contraction, but we don't lose people to the Driver Inc. model because they won't give up what they have, while working at our place.
Thank you. That's just helpful context for me. I would love to hear again kind of a recommendation from each of you around the right role for the federal government here. It's the province's role to do the safety piece and enforcement, but where should we draw the line? We talked about the national standards. Does that make sense given, the role the province has?
I think the national safety standard, but again, the CRA should be getting involved in this as well. Let's see where some of these payments are coming from. If we do have these offshore payments, I mean, it's a good way to catch some of the players quickly so that we can remove the bad apples and the non-compliance so that we can start making our roads safer.
Exactly. We just start with that, and that would be a good thing to do. Yeah.
And the reinstatement of the T4A brings a federal oversight to this as well. And without that, there's not the conduit between CRA and the contractor that's pretending to be a contractor is really an employee. So the T4A reinstatement by federal jurisdiction and oversight would be very, very important tool to use.
Thank you very much. I'm actually done with my questions, so if Mr. Mazon...
Merci beaucoup de partager ton temps.
Thank you very much for sharing your time with me. Mr. Bourgeois, earlier you made a comment, quite an important comment for this committee, in terms of the SAAQ Quebec Driving Bureau's licensing exams. We allow territories and provinces to interpret the rules, but in looking at the SAAQ rules, you mentioned that there are a lot of irregularities during the driver's tests, and we find this most aberrant. But on the SAC website, it says that it's strictly forbidden to use cameras. There are professionals who are there from SAC. It has to be conducted in French or in English. There's supervision that's provided. Now, you're testifying to this committee that there's something that's going on with the SAC. For the well-being of this committee, could you explain more to us about how the SAC is going off the road when it comes to license issuance? There's even an investigation with bribes that were given, and people got their licenses. It's all public. So again, to assist this committee, the practical exam. There are two things that you said. You said there's a practical exam and they can't read the signs. But the practical exams are done with somebody from the SAC who is supposed to supervise. This person knows the language of the signs. And this has to be in French, not translatable. It has to be in French or English. No other language is allowed. No translators are allowed. On the SAC website, it says only French or English. And what you're telling us is that some people are taking the road with the SAC accompanying people who don't speak English or French, and they can't read the signs, and they still get their licenses. Yes. Go to Henri Bourassa. I'll take you around there. No problem. Well, to assist this committee, I think this is very important in our recommendations so we should be able to move forward with this. We cannot resolve everything all in once, but if we can resolve some of these smaller points, I think for the well-being of this committee, Mr. Seymour has indicated to us, after a question from Mr. Barrett, we were told two different things. Could the federal government do more? Yes. But at the same time, put more responsibility on the shoulders of the provinces. So Mr. Seymour said, yes, provinces should legislate more. Do you think that the federal government is doing enough? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lauzon. Mr. Bourgeois, Mr. Adams.
Testimony with us today on this very important study. We wish you safe travels home. With that, colleagues, this meeting is adjourned. See you all on Thursday morning.